Dr. Joe Oravecz.
What inspired you to become a mental health advocate?
Oh my gosh, right. Um, I'd say, well, for the last 30 years, up until a year ago, I was a vice president of student life and engagement, enrollment management at universities up and down the East Coast and into the Midwest. And part of my portfolio of student life, if you can imagine, not only was it the dorms and co-curricular activities and athletics, it was also student counseling services. And so with that, I always looked through the lens of how can we support our students holistically. And again, this has been for the last 30 years. So I will be dating myself, but when we talked about avian flu and a variety of other things, that it's that holistic component that we need to always be aware of. So from that, I then, throughout my own mental health journey and also as a single foster adoptive parent, kind of from a personal standpoint, navigating through trauma informed care about that lens as far as, again, being a supportive family member, going through a lot of variety of family therapy and such, that I realized, there's much more here. And if I'm having challenges as an individual that has an advanced degree, how do we help others to be able to navigate giving voice to mental health and mental well-being, and then also navigating all the support systems that are in place? So with that component and working at a university, I wanted to continue making sure that we walk the talk, that we just don't say, hey, you have support systems and have an appointment with a mental health therapist. COVID. And then during COVID, as soon as the world shut down, Mike, I realized March of 2020, I realized within that week that we're going to be socially isolated. Our students are going to be socially isolated. Our families, our employees, that sense of belonging, the emotional stress that everyone is going to go through and such, that's going to metastasize. No matter how long, is this going to be a 3-month thing? Is this going to be going on more and more into years? Little did we know it would be that long. What I realized at that point is, like, how are we going to help our students re-enter? What is that going to look like? Sedentary lifestyles, poor health choices. So all of this holistically, I realized we got to do more. I had no data to base my gut on. It was just like, this is just kind of is anyone else thinking like that? And it was more or less crisis management. Everyone's just like, how are we going to just manage this whole isolation and quarantine and such? And I wanted to also think long term of how is this going to impact society. So with that, it was a 3-year marathon. People don't necessarily fully understand that when you work on a college campus, you're managing a small city, and it's 24/7, and so it was a marathon, and then we started to re-enter. We never shut down the university I was at. We had students that were living on campus because of housing insecurity and food insecurity. But regardless, I'm also talking with K through 12 and the teachers, and how are they managing the students, and then also looking at employees. That was the key factor for me. It was when I started looking at employees, I was being asked, how are we managing the students and mental health and so forth. And I shared, we're going to do a really amazing job in trying to help this, because we didn't have a roadmap. Then I realized for employees, no one's really looking at the employees, and how are we going to focus on that? So I realized in my position, in my own mental health journey and such, that I needed to be able to talk more about it, to be at the tables, because with the stigma of mental health, the majority of people don't want to talk about it. I realized the power of my voice and the position that I held, that I had the opportunity to really shine a brighter light on this in a variety of different demographics and different settings. So that's a long story, very, very fast as far as that. And I am just incredibly passionate that now crisis begets opportunity. So with the COVID pandemic, even though those of us that were very much mental health advocates prior to the pandemic, really now society and globally, we're realizing that that sense of loneliness, that sense of belonging has further exacerbated our needs from anxiety to depression and to severe mental illness. So this is kind of where now in my role as CEO of NAMI Broward County to be able to further advocate for that. And I also do my own private work in working with companies and speaking about we really have to focus on the bottom line, and that bottom line is our employees and about mental health and well-being.
And with your years of experience at colleges, have you seen college students be a little more open to talking to therapists and sharing their emotions?
Yes, this is what's so exciting, quite honestly, because through my experience of, and especially with this generation, Generation Z going to Alpha and then Beta, that their comfort level is amazing, and the ability to really talk about and what do we need to do. And I take that and that experience and that comfortability, and I'm talking now to employers and departments of HR, and as they are hiring into their workforce, that I've shared, are you ready for the generation that's coming on in? Because they are very comfortable talking about mental health and mental well-being and setting boundaries. And those then the hiring authorities that are, I don't want to say, well, I will say older or seasoned, than they're hiring, that, those days of suck it up, we're just going to move on. Well, when you look at recruiting new employees and retaining them, this is a generation for the next generation after generation that will be very comfortable in talking about mental health and creating it in that. So that's where I'm saying we've got to meet them, meaning that generation coming on in where they're at, because it is important to the bottom line of the company and to the workforce.
With NAMI, they do so much great work. I've been working with my local chapter here in
Great.
Virginia, NAMI, and they've been great. But how did you get involved with NAMI?
Yeah, well, I'm so appreciative of your involvement. So when I was in the process of, as I was adopting my son, and then as an older foster child, and then going into puberty, as we all know, kind of things start to exacerbate even more. And that trauma as an older foster child started to metastasize, and I just needed to find a support system, and where, how, who can, I don't know who to talk to and such. And the NAMI family to family program, really is the one that I found where I was located, and so from there to be able to have that experience and know that. Each chapter or organization locally is loosely affiliated with a state chapter, and then loosely affiliated with the national organization. So all the programs are evidence based, and so with the training and the facilitators, everyone has gone through it. And that is where I felt as though it's just not someone coming on in and not realizing, well, I really didn't go through this. However, I'm going to share with you some resources. And that's not the NAMI approach. And so with that, I realized after being in the university for so many years and 30 years, that I wanted to do more with mental health advocacy. And I thought I was going to retire from a university, and even through my own mental health journey, it was very difficult of operating 24/7 and helping others through the COVID and through the university, and that, when you're putting that mask on you first, sort of like that flight attendant that always says in a crisis, you got to put your air mask on first to help others. I wasn't doing that. I was just helping others, and I started going down a very dark path. It was just very, very, a lot of anxiety for me, and I knew I needed to walk the talk, and I needed to get my own personal help and personal well being. Even from there, then, people were saying, you can do so much more. And these are outside of the universities, because of your involvement in the community and such, and how you're interacting with different agencies, be it with the Chamber of Commerce, be it I was at a point in time an elected Board of Education member, trustee. They're like, you can do so much more. And so that's kind of where I started to say, now's the time to talk about mental health even more at a greater perspective from what can we do to provide resources, but also from policy making, from lobbying with elected legislators and so forth. That I realize there aren't a lot of people that look like me that are strongly advocating for changes with mental health that need to be able to talk about. And with my experience, I felt as though I need to help for the greater good. And that's kind of how I decided. And then NAMI Broward County was looking for a new CEO, and I determined that with my work that I always want to work within a community that has really good relationships internally with other agencies. And that doesn't happen often across the country because I've lived and worked at so many different universities. And so with that, I was like, this could be a really good fit to be able to make a difference. And it's collectively to do that. So that is where I absolutely found, and even with the other people that you've had on your podcast, have interacted with some of them, that this is the time is now. The energy is there, the momentum is there, and it's not going away. It's not a one and done social media app that's gonna. This is something that everyone is getting on board with, and if they're not on board, they're already contemplating. I need to do more. I need to provide that voice to it, and that's what my hope is.
What is it like working with other people who have a similar mission?
Hmm. It is. It's exhilarating. It's exciting. It's the constant of what and can we do? And because I go back to that phrase of a rising tide floats all boats, and so how can we come together to do more and advocate? And that's where what's so exciting for me is that even though I was just had a meeting yesterday with a company that wants to do more about a program that I do and a talk that I do about a stigma-free workplace. And so, what can we? Now's the time. We don't want to be performative in what we say about our wellness and our mental health. And so, as I'm talking more with a variety of small and larger companies that they want to do more. And it's scary for a lot of people because they're just like, I'm not sure if this is the right thing. However, I want to reinforce and say, if you're saying that you're nervous or you're scary, you also go for your employee. Your employees are waiting for you. They're waiting for you to give permission or to talk about your own mental health journey. And that's kind of where I felt as though I need to be sharing more and more about my own experience and even at the C-suite level and such because if people and you hear from celebrities and from athletes and such, and sometimes that's a far reach for people to
Yeah.
really connect with. It's amazing and we need to have more. However, where's closer to home? Where's someone that I pull into the parking lot and or I see them in the grocery store that I'm like, yes, and they're an incredible role model and you're giving permission to talk about it.
I completely agree with you. I live with bipolar disorder too,
Yeah, yeah,
and talking to people with lived experience goes much
completely.
more than celebrities or research or whatever.
Yeah.
Just talking to someone going through similar things. They don't have to have the exact thing I have, but
Hmm.
just similar things. It makes the world a difference.
Right, completely, and I think that, and we know that, and it's more or less when you hear it. NAMI has a program that we call in our own voice. That's exactly what you want to do. You want to be able to have that ability to be able to hear it from others, and then who knows that? Oh gosh, if it's sort of like an open mic opportunity. I'm hearing you share your story. I'm hearing another person share their story. And I'm like, I'm ready to start sharing mine. And so it gives power. And that is where I think those that are going through their own mental health journey and trying to identify what are the coping skills that I need, once you start using those coping skills, you start realizing, and if you're prompted with good therapy and such, to be able to say, let's get your power back. And part of that for a lot of people is actually talking about it. For me, it took about 2 years for me to feel comfortable to be able to share more and more. And so that's more or less, we never want to push people. It's more or less whenever the time is right. And sometimes you don't know when the time is right until all of a sudden it happens. You're like, all right, let's do it. And kind of that proverbial ripping the band-aid off and just doing it. And then once you do, what I realized, the people's responses, their reactions, and that's also part of like, what are people going to say? Are they going to shun me or what? It's amazing that once you start sharing your story, others will say, I'm experiencing the same thing. And there you go. That's exactly what you hope for, that you are giving that space to another person to say, thank you. This has really helped me, and I got to do more. I'm like, wonderful. So that's kind of that starfish story, that you have a man on the beach, 10,000 starfishes, and picks it up and throws one out back into the ocean. And there's another guy that says, you've got 10,000, you're not going to be able to make a difference. And picking up that one starfish, kid throws it on in, saying, well, I made a difference to that one.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what are some of the programs you're working on?
Well, that's one thing that for I am doing is really working closely with the companies, as I've shared, as far as that stigma-free workplace and coming on in. And what's really important for me is that as I'm having conversations with companies, I go deeper with the C-suite and the executives to talk about, from an executive coaching standpoint, is that it's lonely when you are in that C-suite, when you have that responsibility. And in part, that's what I experience as well, is that we've got to do a really deep dive inward to understand that as we are wanting to be able to support our employees and lead a particular company, if it's a company of a small business of three or one, or a large, significant conglomerate to an extent, that to be authentic in your leadership, and really to navigate your well-being, your mental health, is absolutely critical. Now, I'm not a licensed psychologist. However, with my own lived experience in significant years and overseeing counseling services and such, that I realized there's too much there. It's too quiet at the top.
Hmm.
And I've absolutely, through my lived experience, have pushed back, saying, why are we not talking about, we are performatively saying, yes, we have EAP and Wellness Wednesdays and such. However, are we ready? Are you, as a company, or how can I help to be ready to really talk about that well-being? Because again, employees are needing it and they're expecting it. If we're able to talk about our physical health benefits all the time, where's the conversation about our mental health benefits, and how do you leverage that, and what does it look like? I think before I pass on, my hope is that we're going to be able to talk about mental health as easy as we're able to talk about, what podiatrist am I using? So you're just
Right.
like, hey, where are you going for your back? I got a bad back. And they're like, well, yeah, I go to so and so. And then next phrase, and I got to find a really good therapist. Who might you recommend? And no one blinks an eye. It's just like, yeah, this is who. So this is kind of where my hope of in a vision is, to be able to really push that forward. So it is from speaking with companies that do their annual meetings and really want to focus on well-being. However, I just had another meeting yesterday, was we're working at a project where I would be coming in and kicking off their annual year, really focusing on well-being and mental health. And I'm going on in and talking with the C-suite about what does it look like of leading with mental well-being and creating that culture, and then having workshops with the respective departments within the company. So, and this is goes throughout the entire year. So we know that these are opportunities, and it's teaching people how to fish. What are the resources? What are the resources of the community? What does NAMI provide? And because where I'm going with this, Mike, is that um, I don't want people needing to reach out to NAMI, to other agencies when they're in a crisis.
Yeah.
It's that preventive, right? So that's kind of even with physical health too. It's like, how can we be more productive? How can we be preventive medicine to an extent? So it's just that, if we have these continued workshops about resources, that you and I are coworkers, and all of a sudden I am in crisis, I have a family member, and I'm trying to find the resources. However, you and I have attended all these different programs and workshops. You're able to say, "Hey, Joe, do you remember there's a couple different resources that are available?" I'm like, yes, thank you. I completely forgot because I'm in crisis to be able to do that. But it's more or less, let's teach people how to fish and what is all out there, because the more that you're able to identify, you're overwhelmed, quite honestly, of all the resources. And that goes back to, you don't know what you don't know. And so of having the opportunity for me coming on in and talking and identifying these resources, I work closely with the human resource offices as well, because they're just like, people really don't pay attention to this information when we give it to them. Then I'm like, I know, and so let me help with that. And that's even with from the NAMI resources. There's so many different behavioral health organizations that are in the area, but really having a person to come on in, A, lived experience, B, being at the C-suite, C, saying that, we need it. This is hard. This is a hard topic. However, once we start talking about it more, it doesn't become hard to talk about. It just becomes natural to be able to do that.
What are some of the things you've learned from your son?
Oh my gosh. What I've learned is, patience, and that, and also how people learn and succeed differently in different environments. So is it a structured environment? Is it knowing that the way that I want to do things, and I think this is even just as a parent, regardless of differing abilities, that you can't force it upon the way that you want things to be done. It's just really understanding through their lens and trying to really find it out through their lens. And that's how I have been able to take that experience, to be able to then think through, even as a supervisor, to be able to say, okay, always try to put yourself in their shoes, to then to be able to see where do we need to go. The other piece too, and this might be going out really, really deep, and when we're talking about mental health, and severe mental health, is that I've also been able to learn more about residential treatment centers and a variety of different of levels of therapy, and individual outpatient therapies and partial hospitalization, and really getting to know um, the medical and psychological psychiatric treatment that is available, and how to navigate all of that as well. So the other piece for me is that when I have family members that are in crisis or just don't know what is all available, I'm able to for also say, I didn't know either. And this is what I learned. And holy cow, let me help you through that, because hopefully I can help you identify some resources more quicker, because you're just trying to do the right thing. And I think that's overall, as a parent, be it a natural parent or an adoptive parent or foster parent, you're just trying to do the right thing, and you just don't know what questions to ask. But knowing that there's people like, a variety of us, me, to be able to say, yes, yes, and let me help, because it's incredibly overwhelming.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
Thank you for asking that. I am a staunch advocate of physical fitness and my own meditation. And every morning, kind of have my own ritual because I really um, even when I am awake in the morning, I do a kind of a body scan and mental health scan to be able to figure out, okay, am I anxious? What's going on here? To be able to kind of figure out, okay, where am I at? What sort of meditation? There's some amazing apps that are out there that I have both in the morning and in the evening. And then I'm again early riser. I hit the gym to be able to, and I know probably 20 minutes into my workout, if it's cardio or if it's weightlifting, to an extent that things, if I am anxious or I have any anxiety, that starts to lessen. And I know what time of my workout, I'm like, okay, this is good. I try to eat as healthy as possible as well. Um, because this is just the holistic approach. The other piece that gives me grace is that for the majority of my life, I have had music part of my life as far as performance, and say last, well, the majority of where it sits is with singing and singing with ensembles, and so that is something that I'm incredibly appreciative of having the opportunities of singing with high quality ensembles. And what I learned here through my mental health journey is that from a physical standpoint and mental health and anxiety and such, there's the vagus nerve system, and there's a vagus nerve that runs through the neck as well. That when it's activated, it allows for one, for the stress, the anxiety to dissipate. And there was a part in time in the last couple of years where I wasn't singing, and I couldn't figure out why. I'm just there was just a lot going on emotionally for me. And then when I was been able to take this position, and then being part of a phenomenal ensemble, and I'm singing again, I'm like, every rehearsal is a therapy session in a very good way, because it is something that I need to have that for just that camaraderie, sense of belonging, but also there is a physical component. So that's where music and those people that are able to make music is really important. And again, who knew? So I do that as well. So that's kind of where it gives me grace, and have a couple of dogs as well, and so that opportunity to be able to just take some time and create peace is really knowing where it needs to happen. So that's what I'm able to do. What do you do?
What do I do?
Yeah.
Uh, I do try to work out too, and actually, with this video editing, that brings
Okay.
me peace.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
really enjoy doing that, not as like a job. It's like something I need because a few weeks ago during the holiday, I didn't really edit, and I'm like, I'm missing something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
something like that really helps me.
Oh, that's outstanding. And that's to an extent you're able to control that. And that's kind of where, also one thing as far as, because I just wrote another article that'll be published, that I'm looking at, a part of me that I discovered through my own mental health journey is, Marcus Aurelius with Stoicism, and the ability of to control the controllables and not trying to control the uncontrollables. And that is something that more and more that I'm hearing more research that's being done, even though that was ancient Greek philosophy, that's now people are just like, that's how you can manage so many things in your life. It was just realizing, depending upon how someone drives, or we've got this project that needs to happen, what can I control and what can I not? And to be able to let that go, even though you have control freaks, they were like, no, 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 we got to do it. I'm like, well, you're going to cause a lot more anxiety, but that's kind of more, excuse me, of that stoicism that is really important, that I recommend that people kind of look into as well.
Where do you want to see your mission, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh gosh, I think excuse me, I know that I want to continue to spread the word and to give voice. And my hope is that in a variety of different venues, from the K through 12 education, talking with teachers, as well as to in higher education, and then also in companies. I really, really want to be part of companies acknowledging and leveraging more of what we need to do for our workforce. There is not enough information that is out there. There's not enough advocates that talk about the workforce. Again, I go back to the entertainers, the athletes that really talk about that component, and the stress that's a part of being in that area, that segment, and where the majority of the world is, it's when they're working and it's, I don't even want to say 9 to 5, it's just in the workforce getting a paycheck. And how can companies really fold a well-being program into their company? So because that is, when you look at the ROI and the bottom line of your company, it is your employees. And employees are now needing to have that acknowledgement of mental health and well-being. And so how can I help companies articulate that and build that into their program? There are definitely more and more people like me or companies like me that want to be able to do it. However, what I'm not seeing is that you need to have someone at the top that in wanting to shift the culture that has a lived experience
Yeah.
and of mental health journey and executive experience as well. And that's what I want to be able to continue. And it's exciting because these conversations can't happen at large conventions.
Right.
These happen at one very intentionally one on one, and it takes a long time. And I'm absolutely fine with that because that goes back to the starfish story, that if I'm able to have a conversation with one CEO and they're able to do that now into their company, well, that's one more company that's on board.
How can people reach out and learn more?
Oh, well, I appreciate that. It is my website, so joeoravec.com, which hopefully if you can put that in,
Yes.
is allows scheduling an appointment, a consult with me, and especially with you all, is that there's no charge for that first consult, to be able to see how can we partner to be able to do that, because there's, as I shared, there's so many different opportunities of me coming on in to be able to do a variety of different workshops and to help curate for the individual, for the company to be able to take that next step, which is really the call to action that I have.